Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this afternoon's webinar with MT Services. My name is Jeremy Thomas. I'm the host for the session. I'm joined by Stuart Connors from TermSet Software, and we'll be here for the next 25 minutes to take you through the TermSet solution and give you a background for what it'll actually do, see it in operation, and give you an idea of how it would benefit your organization. I can promise you some really, really interesting stuff for the next 25 minutes, but that starts when I hand over to Stuart. So just as a little bit of a background to our session this afternoon, we'll be looking at TermSet. It's one of the products which we partner with here as MT Services in our digital workplace range, and you'll see it's a very, very powerful and intelligent piece of software aimed at making some sense of the documentation which you've got held around your office in electronic form. So today is our first seminar in the Digital Workplace series, and really it's all about getting your house in order in terms of documentation. Our next presentation will be in March. A product called Nintex. Nintex is a workflow package which will take the documents which you've got organized with TermSet and put them into an organized and intelligent workflow process. Again, it cuts out a lot of duplication or a lot of mundane activity and automate it through your network, through emails. Very, very clever stuff. Also can be used for information capture, so it could be something like a data survey, capturing information, putting it back into your SharePoint system, and again, with the help of TermSet, we can make a lot more sense of the data that's being captured. This all fits into Office 365 and SharePoint, and I believe everybody online now uses at least Office 365, but may not be so familiar with SharePoint. SharePoint's a great place for keeping documentations, and you'll see during the course of the presentation, it makes sense to have a structured storage of your Office documents, and TermSet will help you generate that document storage. Now, the one thing which many people complain about SharePoint is the visual aspect of it isn't great. It's not the best system to work with. So our third presentation in the Digital Workplace series will be in April, a product called LiveTiles, which will give you a very nice interface into your all of the tools which you need for your working day. So there could be SharePoint, it could be a website, it could be a Power BI dashboard. So together, TermSet, Nintex, LiveTiles, and SharePoint form a very interesting way of digitizing a lot of the time and effort and work which goes into running your business. Now, today, TermSet, it's really aimed at giving some sense and giving some value to the documents which are stored in your structured and unstructured document storage. Well, what does that mean, really? Well, in your office, you could be keeping your electronic documents in a number of different places. They could be online, so there could be something like Office 365. Within that, you'd have OneDrive, or you could be using Box, Dropbox. These are all hosted online document repositories where you can be keeping documents. You may also be keeping most of your Office documents on a file server with many drives and many, many folders. The folders could contain spreadsheets, Word documents, PDFs, various different types of documentation, or you could be holding information on a CRM system. So I'm sure that many of you will be using at least one of these locations for storing your documentation. The key question for today from us, though, is how the heck do you find a document on there, and specifically, how do you find a document on any of those locations which contain a specific type of information? Now, today we're going to be focusing upon GDPR, and specifically, we'll be looking at personal identifiable information, how we can find that in these locations. But just bear in mind that the TermSet application can be used to index and find any type of information on any document. So it's very, very clever stuff. Probably best if at this point now I hand over to Stuart. Stuart's going to give us a 20-25 minute overview of TermSet. I think you'll be impressed. I think you'll enjoy it. So if now I can hand over to him. So here we go to Stuart. Yes, here we go. And hoping now that Stuart can hear me.
Hi, Jeremy. Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you as well. I'm hoping everybody else can hear you as well. So fire away.
Great. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Great. Okay. Thanks, Jeremy, for that introduction. So my name is Stuart Connors. I'm the CEO and co-founder of a company called TermSet. We're a software company based in the UK, been established for about approaching 4 years now. And today I'm going to show you one of our products, which basically helps automate the process for discovering personal identifiable information within documents that are structured or unstructured. This term PII, which is personal identifiable information, is a new term that I guess is being created by this new GDPR regulation. And it basically means any information that you store that potentially identifies somebody, that somebody could be a customer or an employee. So Jeremy, we're now seeing your screen for some reason. Okay, so what does this mean to you as a business? It means that we're able to help you automate the process for handling subject access requests or right to be forgotten requests. So as Jeremy mentioned, I'm going to spend 15-20 minutes just giving you a high-level overview of what the product, how it works, how it benefits you as an organization, and how it helps you with your GDPR readiness. As you're probably aware, one of the first, the GDPR itself has a number of steps you have to follow around becoming compliant or being ready for GDPR. And the first step is really around understanding your data, where you're exposed for your data in your organization. That's the piece that we really help, is understanding your information in your organization.
Stuart, I think we're still having trouble seeing your screen. So I could just ask somebody, one of our audience, just to drop us a chat message to see whether they can see your screen or not. Yeah, Sophie says she can see fine. Sorry, carry on. I think it might just be one local user who's sent me a text message so they can't see it, but carry on, you should be fine.
Okay. So before I actually go into my demonstration, I just want to spend one slide talking about what we see as a common challenge amongst organizations around the looming GDPR date in May. As most of you are aware, GDPR is a new law that kicks in May, and it's really focused around any company that trades in the EU has to be comply with the new GDPR regulation. And that's all around ensuring that you can identify and retrieve any information that's personal in your organization for your employees or customers. And this information such as names, addresses, bank details, medical conditions, date of birth, anything that's seen as personal that you can identify via to a customer or an employee. Now, there's kind of two real challenges that customers are facing really when you boil this down, and it really is the first one is the new change in the subject access request. Now, as you know, SARs, as they're known as, SARs are not a new thing. They've been around for many, many years. But what it is changing is in a SAR, now your response time will increase from 40 days down to 30 days. So if you receive a subject access request after May, you only have 30 days to respond to that SAR request. The other new law that's coming into effect as of May, which is the one that's really keeping most customers awake at night, is this new one called the right to be forgotten, the right to be removed rule. This is a new law that kicks in May, and this is really around where you have to find any information that you keep electronically about your employees or your customers. So this means in the future that any customer or potential disgruntled employee has the right now to write to you and demand that you find all the information you store on them electronically in your organization and you have to report it back to them in a certain period of time. If you don't do that in a certain period of time, then that individual has the right to go to the ICO, who are the independent government body, and then issue with a breach. And that breach could turn out to become a potential fine for your organisation, or more importantly, some bad PR, which could affect your company's PR in the marketplace. So just to recap, what's really changing with GDPR is the new response time for responding to subject access requests, and also the new right to be forgotten removed rule. Now, what we found is, and there's surveys to kind of back this up, is that most employees in your organization, because of multiple devices now and the way we're working in today's day and age, most employees are storing most of the information, up to 80% of it, are stored in Office documents, whether they're structured or unstructured. So Office means your typical Word document, Excel spreadsheets, PowerPoints, PDFs, maybe taking images, photocopies, copies of certain things. So it seems that employees are creating more data than they did maybe 5-10 years ago, and this data is typically being stored within Office documents. And those Office documents are then being stored by employees, typically in your systems that IT have issued them. So, for example, if you're using O365 or SharePoint or your file shares or your network drives, then your employees are storing them in those systems. Or what we're also seeing is there's this thing called shadow IT, non-approved IT systems. So these are where employees, typically millennials, are storing information in systems like Dropbox or Google Drive. So although IT may not have those approved, you are seeing though that certain employees are still storing information in these systems because that's the way they like to work with those systems. So your employees are storing more information, creating more IP for your company, storing that typically in unstructured documents, and those documents are being stored in your typical approved IT systems and also non-approved systems. And to kind of give you some independent view on this, there was a report that was carried out last year, a survey that said about 49% of companies had a document breach in the past 2 years. So even before GDPR has come into effect, you're probably seeing in the press people like TalkTalk, TUI, Deloitte, other companies are being called out in the press for a number of breaches even before GDPR has kicked in. And you can see here, there's 3 bullet points on the end of this slide. You know, a lot of employees are accidentally exposing information stored in documents without even knowing they're doing this. And most companies actually admit if they were hit with a breach or a SAR request, they have no idea how to find that information. Today, it's a manual process for them. And typically, we've had a few customers that have said every time they received a SAR request, it's taken an employee to manually find information. It's taken them up to almost 60 to 90 days to find that information on that individual. That's been okay in the past, but obviously now under GDPR, as of May, those laws are more tightened now, and the effect of not supplying information means potential large fines or potential companies being called out in the press, again adding towards bad publicity for that organisation. So I just want to spend just a few minutes on what we see as the challenge for most organisations. So if that's the challenge slide, what's the solution? So as I mentioned, TermSet, we're a UK software company. We developed a bit of software that we called Scanner. So Scanner is a software that you install locally in your IT estate. It's not a cloud solution. You install it locally. You can install it on your desktop or on an application server. And what Scanner does is you point it to the systems where your documents are stored in. So on this screen here, you can see that we've got a number of what we call document management systems. So these are systems where your employees are storing documents in. So you could be in or moving to O365. You could be using Dropbox. You could be using traditional file shares. You could be using SharePoint, Dropbox, or OneDrive. So what Scanner will do is you will connect Scanner, the application, to the systems where your company stores its documentation in. So in this example, you click it to you scan it to an Office 365 or a file share. Scanner then will read the documents that are stored in those systems. It will then read any Office documentation. It will read any version of Word, Excel, PowerPoint. We can read any version of PDF. If we see any images or photocopies or scanned images, we will on the fly OCR them. OCR means optical character recognition. What that means is we will turn any image into readable text. So we're able to read any text from any Office document, PDF, and any images or photocopies. So if you're a recruitment company and you have drawers full of people's IDs, maybe passports or driving licenses, we're able to convert those electronically and pull out the passport number, the name, start and end date, or driving license number, etc. So we're able to put out all the text on those images. So Scanner points to your systems. It reads and understands the documents that are stored in those systems. We can read any language of any document, any version of Office, PDF, and any image. And then we then find these sensitive keywords of those documents, and we then generate a report back to you, which you can then visualize and interrogate the data that we present back to you. And those reports can be ingested into Excel, or if you use any BI tools like Click or Power BI, you can also ingest those into those BI tools. So at a high level, here's what Scanner does. It's a local software. You point it to the system where your documents are stored. It reads those documents, understands the language, understands the text, pulls out the keywords you want to look for. We can read any version of Office, PDF, and any images or photocopies. And then we generate reports for you then to make decisions on what to do with that information that you found. So you can now, if you receive a SAR request or right to be forgotten request in the future, you can now automate that process very quickly with our product called Scanner. Okay, I'm now going to spend the next 3 or 4 slides showing you the product demo at a high level, conscious of time. So I've just taken a few screenshots of how the product works, give you a flavor of how that product works from a user perspective. As a next step, we can obviously arrange, if anybody's interested, a more of a deep dive demonstration for you, and also we're able to offer free trials of our product as well. So on this slide, you're seeing a screenshot of the product, so the user interface. So with Scanner, when we create a new scan, we ask it to do 2 things. We ask it to where to point at, so which systems you want to read, and then what documents do you want to find, and what are the keywords you want to find in those documents. So this view here, we're asking Scanner to create a new configuration. Scanner has been built for non-IT people to use. So we're now going to create a new configuration. We're now going to ask Scanner to connect to a file share in this example. So we're going to enter a file share path, or we can click on from the drop down. So we're going to ask Scanner to read a HRL drive in the file share. We're also going to ask Scanner to read a SharePoint team site. So here we'd enter the SharePoint or the O365 tenant username and password. And like any system, the Scanner is fully protected by a username and password. So you would enter either your AD credentials or your own login password and name to have access to Scanner. So you've asked Scanner to point to a file share and a SharePoint library. We're now going to ask Scanner, what are the keywords we want to find in those documents in those 2 systems? So this screenshot here you're seeing are what we call our rules engine library. So this library contains over 100 personal keywords you can find in those documents. As you can see on the left, we have a number of personal keywords from across the world. What you would do is you would choose the words from the library and drag them to the right. So in this example, we're going to ask to look for all documents in our file share and SharePoint that contain people's bank account numbers, their credit card numbers, a person's name, credit card information, email and postcode information. Now, the rules engine library has 100+ words, but we're also able to create our own keywords or add our own keywords to the library. So for example, you may say, well, we want to find GDPR information, people's names and addresses. We also want to find our own specific, maybe employee number or customer reference number. And you know that your employee numbers always follow a certain pattern. So our product uses a form of artificial intelligence based on pattern matching. So in this example, you can see that we're going to enter a new rule called a credit card rule. As we all know, all credit card numbers are 16 numbers long. They're always 4 numbers with a space, followed by a 4 number and a space and a 4 number. So in this example, we may create a new employee number. And we know that in your company, every employee number for example, is always 5 numbers long with a dash between in the middle. So you would create that as a pattern. So in a nutshell, what we're saying here is you're able to create your own patterns, your own words, and also edit some of those. And in the top right, where it says rule weight, where it says number 10, we're also able to add a weight or add a rule based on the words we find in the documents. So you may say every time we see someone's name, we give that 10%. If we see their bank details, we'll give that 30%. So we're able to pull out certain scores or weights based on how sensitive the words are in the documents that we find. So to summarize, a very extensible rules engine library that contain lots of keywords you want to look for in the documents. We're also able to create our own keywords and also add our own keywords and also add a weight or a score to the words we find in the documents based on their sensitivity. So we've asked Scanner to point to a file share and a SharePoint. We've asked it to look for certain keywords. We've also created our own keywords. We now hit scan. Scanner now goes to those documents in those systems. It reads the documents based on the keywords you've asked it to look for, and we now have a report back that says we've now completed a scan initially. So here we're seeing a screen view of what documents we found that contain that PII or sensitive information. Scanner, when you first run the product, it obviously reads all the documents in your file systems. However, on the subsequent scans, it only reads the new documents or the new changes in those systems. So it won't run a full scan every time. Now, so we can now see we've run a scan and we've seen the scans run completed. We can see how long it took to run each scan. We can see some of the scores on the far right hand side. And now we're going to click on one of those rules and just drill into what we found. So in this example, we found a document, here's the file path, and we asked it to look for 3 things. We asked it to look for a credit card CVV number, and the credit card expiry date. So we now found in this document, we know that the credit card occurred twice, the credit card number, the CVV number on the back also appeared twice in the document, and so did the expiry date. And you can also see on the far right-hand side, we've created a score based on the information that we found. So we asked it to attribute a score of 10 to every time we found that information in those documents. And like I said, the reports that are sent to you, you can ingest them into Excel. So if you're a fan of Excel, we can see in this example, we've pulled the report into an Excel spreadsheet. So we can now report on what we found. So we can see that we found certain documents in certain file paths. We found the rules that were ran. We found people's names, people's credit card details, people's home addresses, people's postcodes. We can see on what value we found in those documents and also the weighting systems. On the far right, we found someone's name, street address, credit card information, and we've now seen the score based on what we found on the far right hand side. Now, if you're an Excel fan, that's great. However, if you like to use dashboards, so if you're a Click user or Power BI user for Microsoft, we're able to ingest those reports and put them into your BI dashboard. So this example here, here's an example of a report we ran using a BI tool. So here we're showing we ran Scanner on a file share, we ran it on a SharePoint 2013 platform and a SharePoint Online platform. So we read 3 data sources. We can see that in those 3 sources, we actually found 19,000 documents in those 3 sources that found sensitive GDPR information. So about 80% of documents contain sensitive keywords. And like any dashboard, we're now able to drill into that information in the dashboard and break down and drill into the information based on what we found. So we may say, show me all the documents that contain Jeremy's name and his bank details and maybe his credit card information. We're also able to look at the records by the file path. This is quite key. We're also able to point out any duplicates we found in those file paths or any documents hadn't been read for maybe over 4, 5 or 10 years. So we're also able to apply a bit of e-discovery at the same time of finding GDPR information. And in the far right, you can see here we've used the scoring attribute feature. So we're now able to, again, see what keywords we found by the scoring system. Anybody on the call that uses SharePoint? So here, this view here is a SharePoint library. So in this library, we've got a number of Office documents and some PDFs. So whenever we ran Scanner in a SharePoint library, Scanner will create 3 new columns in your SharePoint library. The first column is we call a GDPR matched column. So what information of those documents did we find contained GDPR sensitive information? The next column is, so we found some information. What information did we find in those documents? So we can now see here, we found someone's bank details, a credit card number, and some other information. And the last column is the GDPR score. So remember when I talked earlier in the demonstration about how we can score or weight certain keywords based on what we find in the documents? So here we found that we actually scored information that we found. So the top document that says banking, we can see that we scored that 20% because it found a bank account number and someone's credit card number. So within SharePoint, we're able to now take those scoring numbers, and using products like Nintex, we're now able to take those documents and then apply a workflow to them, so we can then route those documents to certain people in your company to act upon them immediately. So that's a SharePoint view. So to summarize, we've taken SharePoint and added 3 new columns. So that's pretty much the product demo that I wanted to show today. So just conscious of time, I don't want to get into too much detail today, but I'm hoping what you've seen today is we've asked Scanner to point to a file share. We've asked it to point to a SharePoint library. We've used our rules engine library to identify some keywords to look for in the documents. And we've also added some of our own keywords. You can see that when the Scanner looks for those keywords in those documents, it will then pull that information back into a reporting structure, which you can either view via Excel or either a BI dashboard product like Click or Power BI. And then in the SharePoint example, we can also see in the SharePoint view, we create 3 new columns for your GDPR information. This slide here, I've taken from the ICO website. So anybody that's seen this slide knows that the ICO, who are the independent government body for helping companies become GDPR ready, they talk about these 12 steps to follow to help you become GDPR compliant. I won't go into this detail today, but the reason why I show this slide is that TermSet helps you achieve a number of the steps. So the first step is step 2, where they ask you to go and find all the information that you hold in your organization. And as I mentioned, most of your information will be in unstructured documents in your IT system. So TermSet helps you automate that process. TermSet also helps you with step 5, which is they say that you should be able to have a procedure in place to handle any time you receive a subject access request within the new 30-day time period. So TermSet again helps you automate that process. So we help you with steps 2 and steps 5. The next slide I wanted to talk about was if you ever have come across the documentation on the GDPR website, which breaks down what you need to do to be fully compliant, and that contains 11 chapters in those contain 19 articles. This talks about what are the processes and procedures you need to put in place to become GDPR ready for May. So it's not just technology, it talks about people, the training, your process, as well as technology. The reason why I call this out on this slide is that if you were to invest in our product Scanner will help you comply with over 10 of those articles contained in the GDPR documentation. And these articles are broken down here on this slide. And again, I can share this slide deck with you via Jeremy after the call. I'm almost at the last slide now. So who are our customers? We have sold Scanner to customers of all size, large and small, across all verticals. A recent customer I'll call out is United Utilities. They're the UK's largest water provider, based in the north of England. They were on a migration journey. They are migrating all the documents from SharePoint 2010 and file shares to O365 in the cloud. They were very nervous about moving any sensitive information from on-prem to the cloud around the up-and-coming GDPR regulation. So they bought Scanner to really do 3 things in the end. They bought the product to obviously discover all their sensitive in PI data to make sure they were GDPR ready before May, but they were also able to identify any duplicate documents they had in their existing systems, and also they were able to archive documents that hadn't been accessed for over 5 years. So for instead of migrating 8 terabytes of data, they managed to reduce that down to only 6 terabytes of data. They're able to remove 2 terabytes from duplicate files, and also files had been accessed for over 5 years. And obviously ensure that all that information, they were able to identify all the sensitive data. So when if they ever were to receive a SAR request or right to be forgotten request in the future, they knew they had an automated process in place to handle any of those inbound inquiries. So just want to spend just 2 more slides now. This is my second from the last slide. This slide here talks about how we price the product. So the price from the product, we try to keep it very simple and very low entry. The pricing is based on the size of data in your systems where the documents are stored. So the pricing is based on an annual subscription. And as you can see, we try to break the pricing into a typical company size. So if you're a small size company, and let's say you've got, say, a terabyte of data, which equates to about 1 million documents. So you'll pay just under £3,000 a year, and that gives you the license for the whole year, unlimited users. You can then scan up to 1 million documents in those file shares or SharePoint or 365, unlimited for that year's license. If you're a medium-sized organization, then as you can see, the price is $799, and that covers you for 5 terabytes. And obviously, if you're a large customer, 20 terabytes, which is about 20 million documents, the price is $1499. If you're a large enterprise with more than 20 terabytes, then we will give you a price application. If you're a government body, a local authority or a government agency or an NHS or a housing trust, we have a 30% discount. If you're in education, if you're a charity, if you're a school, a college or university or a charity, we have again a very aggressive discount for you guys. We take a 50% discount off the pricing for you. And again, our product is resold to you via our partner today, MT Services. So the pricing is, as broken down here, it's an annual price based on the amount of data you want to read in your documents in your systems. And then this is my last slide. So in summary, what hopefully you've seen today is I've shown you our product called Scanner. Scanner is a software product you install locally in your IT estate. It helps you automate the process for discovering all the PII and sensitive information stored within your documents across your systems. This helps you quickly respond if you should receive a SAR request or right to be forgotten request. Helps towards 2 of the ICO 12 steps, and we help you comply with 13 of the 19 articles that are contained within the GDPR regulation. Thanks for your time. We have a website. Please visit us at termset.com. On our website, you'll see a very short video demo of the product that you can also view offline at a time that suits you. Any questions, drop us an email. Thank you, and I'll hand now back to Jeremy.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much, Stuart. Let's just show my screen as well, just change things over. Just bear with me one moment. So there we go. So hopefully in the past 20-25 minutes, you've seen very, very interesting application. We've got it in-house here, so we can come out and show it to you, look at it in a bit more depth, or working with the guys at TermSet, we can organise for you to have a trial evaluation version of the software. What it really strikes me about TermSet is it brings some order and some value to the documentation on your system at the moment. It's a very effective way of releasing the data that's held somewhere in your system and make it searchable and usable. And I think GDPR now is honing people's interest in being able to make a bit more sense and effectively search for documents. It's a great time to be looking at something like TermSet, and I'd encourage you to do so in further details. At which point I'll say to you, I've got all of your emails of everybody online at the moment, so we will be in contact. You can contact me here at jeremy.thomas@mtservices.uk. Probability is you know us already, and we'll look at things in a few more details. Robert, yes, I will send you that information you've just asked for. I'll send you it later this afternoon, a little bit more detail. And that concludes today's presentation. I'd like to thank Stuart for his time. I really, really appreciate your input there, Stuart. Thank you for everybody else that's attended today. If you need anything else from us, please let me know, and we'll be speaking to you in due course. And that's today done. So thank you very much. There we go. Right, so